Alright, I survived 100 days in hardcore Minecraft in this crazy frozen world. This world has been completely frozen over by a never-ending snowstorm, and there are a ton of new mobs all over the place. There are evil snowmen, dangerous animals, goblin kingdoms, and a lot more. There's also new magical powers to be discovered. My first major goal was to find a way to put an end to the snowstorm, and after that I wanted to take on all the crazy new mobs the world has to offer. And by the end, I wanted to become the ultimate winter mage. Also, whoa, look at that! YouTubers showing you their sub ratio, never before seen, wow! Okay, anyways, if you're new here or you're just not subscribed yet, then you should subscribe because people that are subbed are pretty cool, and cool people are cool. Yeah. And you know what else is cool? The sponsor of today's video, World of Warships. World of Warships is a free-to-play game and it is available for PC. This game is a team-based sea battle that requires different strategies and tactics. And by forming a division, you can even play it with your friends. The game has over 400 different historical ships you can choose from and control, and beautiful maps and unique landscapes, featuring stunning graphics and even weather that changes mid-battle, which is pretty cool. You can also customize your own ships the way that you would like, or the way that performs the best. There are more than 44 million players, and there are 5 different warship types: destroyers, battleships, cruisers, aircraft carriers, and submarines. Look how cool the submarine is! It's lit! Now, December is the holiday season, and World of Warships will be full of fun events, activities, and giveaways. Be sure to download World of Warships using the first link in the description. By registering with that link, you can get a huge starter pack. By using code FIRE during registration, you get 200 free doubloons, the premium battleship USS Texas, 20 Restless Fire camouflages, 1 million credits, and finally, 7 days of a premium account. Thank you again to World of Warships for sponsoring today's video. And without further ado, let's see how I do in these 100 days in hardcore Minecraft in this insane frozen world. Day 1, I spawned into the frozen world with a flint spear, some sheep armor, some bread, and a campfire. And also a few books from some of the mods. There was actually a village right next to where I spawned, and when I was exploring it, a snowman with a gun comes out of one of the houses and starts going crazy. I was able to take it out with my spear, but I was not mentally prepared for a snowman with a gun in the village. I found a chest with some bread and leather armor, and that was actually an upgrade, so I put it on. I also saw a weird green ball of slime that I took out pretty easily. And I also stole like most of the torches from the village because I'm gonna be honest, I needed them more than they did, so it was fine. I also found some gold nuggets in one of the houses. Now, my biggest goal right now was to get a crafting table. It might not seem like much, but in this mod pack, it was not so easy. The first thing that I needed was a flint crafting table, which was easy enough. I went into a nearby cave for some gravel, and then a creeper exploded. This actually allowed me to get some stone before I even got a pickaxe, so you know what? I'll take it. I got some gravel, and then when I exited the cave, there was a stray. I hadn't fully realized it yet, but because it was constantly snowing, that meant that hostile mobs could spawn all throughout the day, which was not fun at all. I started looking at what I had to do next, and it was a whole process just to get a pickaxe. The very first things that I needed were bones and sticks. I got sticks from a tree, and then I made a flint knife, and now I needed bones so I can make some tools. I went back to the village for a second and saw that there were villagers being turned into zombies. I killed the zombie villagers, and then out of nowhere comes this crazy looking purple lizard dude. Then the sun was setting, and this world kinda sucks enough during the day, so I slept off the night. Day 2, I began looking for bones, and then I get jumped by a snowman with a knife. I managed to kill it, but I was not ready for that. Then I found this deactivated drone. It was buried in the snow, and I remembered reading about these whenever I put the mod pack together. I got out the gold nuggets that I got from the village, and after using all 18 nuggets, the drone came to life. This probably looks really scripted right now. I promise you it's not. I just got pretty lucky, but yeah, look at my little new drone guy. Pretty cute, right? And if you think he's cute, then I have some bad news for you all. He did not last very long. I was fighting 2 strays trying to get bones, and then one of them took out my little drone friend, and he just exploded, and I couldn't revive him or anything. He was just gone, so that's unfortunate. However, one of those strays did drop a ring that made me immune to slowness and gave me a movement speed boost, so I would consider it to be a worthwhile trade, personally. Then I saw this bear guardian thing, and that was my sign to go back to the village. I got back to the house that I was staying in and I crafted bone shears. I used these to gather grass and then I made a drying rack and put the grass on it to dry. Then while that was drying, I made a bone pickaxe head. However, by day 3, the grass still was not dried. I set up another drying rack with more grass on it and then I went to find some leather because I would need that for stone tools. However, leather is not what I found. Instead, in one of the ice spikes, I've just found a bunch of really good stuff. I got gold, a diamond, an iron ingot, an iron sword, and also, the absolutely most important thing, a golden pickaxe. This was amazing because it basically let me skip the entire grass drying process, which I also learned later on does not work when it's raining, meaning if the entire world is always snowing, you're never gonna get dried grass, so that was pretty cool. I got home and I stole some cobblestone from a nearby villager's house, and then I made a furnace using the campfire that I spawned in with. I smelted some stone and then I made a stone axe head, but I would need leather so I can make an axe with it. Day 4, I had no food. I was told on the mod page that the only way to get bread early game was to make bread dough, which requires a millstone, and millstone requires granite and andesite, and I couldn't find granite and andesite, and I was about to give up hope. I literally thought it was over for me, but then I saw that one of the mods that I have changed the recipe for bread so that it could be made in the inventory crafting grid. I was saved and I now had 45 bread, which was enough food for a hot minute. At the end of day 4, I found more of that ice with the stuff in it, and I got some chainmail pants and an emerald, but that was about it. Then I stored most of my stuff in one of the village chests to clear my inventory, and now I needed leather. I found more of that ice and got a diamond and some other random stuff, and then I found a ruined portal with a flint steel, obsidian, and a blast protection gold chestplate. Not the best enchantment ever, but in the scenario that I was in currently, I'll take it. I found this really cool tower, and I climbed all the way to the top, and I found a waystone, and I also got some iron and an ender pearl from the chest. However, I still did not have leather, and it was getting dark, so I used the waystone to go home. I tried using a flint and steel to make the grass on the drying rack, dry, but no luck. I didn't really know what I was doing wrong. I know now that it had to not be raining, but at the time I had no idea, and I was a little bit frustrated. The next day I teleported back to that tower to continue my hunt for some leather. I ended up coming across a lion, and for some reason I thought it would be a fantastic idea to attack it, and this thing did a metric ton of damage. It also just never gave up. This thing chased me for ages. Eventually, I got away from it, but then I remembered that I had a mod that made snowballs very good. Whenever I hit a mob with a snowball, it would freeze it in place for a few seconds. So yeah, using that, I froze the lion and then I took it out from a safer distance. And I got the lion's hide, which worked as leather for literally everything except for what I needed, so that was pretty cool. I killed one of those weird bear guardians and it gave me its spike, which could be used for arrows or some random magic stuff later on, but nothing useful to me yet. A bit later, I found one of these weird pig things, and upon taking one out, I got my piece of leather. I then finished off day 6 by making a stone pickaxe and a stone axe. I finally had usable tools. I was now incredibly close to my crafting table. I just needed andesite and granite, and I was basically done. I made a tree stump, and then I used that to make wooden planks. I didn't actually have much I could use these for quite yet, but they would at least make good building blocks. I went to look for andesite and granite, but I couldn't find it anywhere. So I took a risk and I went down into a dungeon to see if there was maybe some granite or andesite as part of the structure. And while it didn't have those, what it did have was just entire crafting tables ready to go. I would have felt bad skipping the intended way to get it, but I was only 2 blocks away anyways, and honestly, I didn't even care. I was ecstatic, I had a crafting table, I was good now. I explored a bit more of the dungeon, and I got an efficiency 2 book, a shield, and also got another crafting table and furnace because they were kind of annoying to get more of. Then I dug straight up and I went home for the night. Day 8, I started smelting iron, and then I placed my crafting table. Only to learn that I could not actually use the table. So yeah, I still had to craft it the intended way, meaning I still needed andesite and granite. Yeah. On the bright side, I still had that shield from the dungeon, so I was a little bit safer now. I found this weird beast dude that just jumps into the air and glides towards me and attacks me, which was a little bit crazy and unexpected, but I was able to take him out pretty easily. And it dropped a wing that could be turned into leather, which was cool, but it would have been really convenient like, 2 days ago, but that's fine. Then I found this really cool biome with these like magic-y looking trees and stuff, and in a ravine in that biome, I saw granite, diorite, and andesite. I finally found them. I mined a massive chunk of it all, which did break my pickaxe, but that was fine because I now finally had granite and andesite. I also got a source gem down there, which came from a purple ore, and it seemed to be how I started magic, so that was definitely important to get. On my way home, I killed a zombie, and it dropped an apple, which gave me immunity to hunger and nausea, so I guess I could now eat rotten flesh for food if I wanted to for some reason. I don't really know. When I got home, I smelted some more stone, and then I made a stone chest, and then right as I made the millstone, I got an achievement, the end of the Stone Age. I checked it, and I could now actually use my crafting table. It was time. I immediately made a diamond pickaxe, and then I finished my armor. Now that I had gotten past the Stone Age, it was time to work on the magic that I needed to stop the snow. I crafted a full iron tool set, and then I used them to make a spell book. This spellbook would let me craft different spells, and currently I could only make some really basic stuff, so I made a projectile damaging spell and tested it on nearby mobs. It didn't do a ton of damage, but it did feel pretty cool to use. I then spent the rest of day 9 reading that mod's book to figure out what I had to do next, and I would need more of those source gems, a lot of wood, and some lava. On day 10, I went back to the magical forest to gather what I needed, and then I got attacked by this weird wolf dude that summoned like angry wolves to attack me. Not cool. I took him out with my sword and then the wolves with my magic, and then I gathered a ton of the magic wood. I also got attacked by this little like lurker creature that kept cloning itself. Pretty annoying, but I got through it. And I also got 7 more of those source gems from earlier. I still needed a few more things to get started, like redstone and more of those source gems, so I spent days 11 and 12 of mining underground. I found a ravine and it had this weird like lapis zombie in it, which was pretty cool. And I also grabbed some lava because I would need that later. After a bit, the cave started to get terrifying. There was whatever this thing is. There were these terrifying howling noises, there were snowman jump scares. It was not fun. I then strip mined for a bit and then I went back to the surface. On day 13, I gathered a few more materials that I needed, and then I made a volcanic source link, a glyph press, and a source jar. This would allow me to create new types of magic, which would get me a little bit closer to stopping the snowstorm. Day 14, I set up the devices that I made just outside the village, just in case they were dangerous in some way. Then I threw the volcanic source link some of the magic wood that I gathered before, and it began producing source, which I would need to create new spell types. I then made some magic clay, and then I used the glyph press, which pulled source from the source jar. I made glyphs for summon steed, freeze, speed, and amplify. Then I created some new spells. The first one that I made gives me a speed boost, and I amplified it to make it speed 2. Then I made one that summons a temporary tamed horse to ride. Then I made one called freeze, which could freeze water and also slow mobs, which in hindsight is probably not the most useful when all the water in the world is already frozen, but it was cool. Then the final one that I created made use of the break glyph that I started with, and I could break blocks from a long distance. Overall, pretty useful stuff. Now, to stop the snow, I needed more source stones, and to get those, I had to mine in the magical forest biome. I also wanted to explore the area a bit, so I rode off on my summoned horse to try and find a new magical forest biome. That is, until I learned that I can actually suffocate in the leaves in this mod pack, which was annoying, so I just used my speed spell instead because it was a lot safer. Then I found one of the magical forests and I got to mining. This biome had a lot of source gems and a lot of gold, so I spent days 15 and 16 mining as much as I could. And by day 17, I had 60 source gems. This should hopefully be enough to get rid of the storm. I first made arcane stone, which I turned into an arcane pedestal, and then I turned that into a ritual brazier. And then I made the tablet of cloud shaping. I was about to perform the ritual, but then I realized that I had no food, so I went and stole the crops from the village, and by then it was nightfall, so I slept. The morning of day 18, I teleported to one of the tower's waystones and I placed my brazier on the very top. I put in the cloud shaping tablet and I began the ritual. It began firing a ton of magic into the sky, and after a bit, the clouds parted, the sky cleared, and the snowstorm had ended. This was not even close to the end though. Now that the storm was stopped, I had to learn more magic and take on all of the insane enemies the world had to offer. And now that hostile mobs weren't spawning during the day, I could explore pretty safely. I wanted to find a place to live, and I also wanted to find a reliable source of food because eating scraps was, not the most optimal. I ended up finding an igloo in a roofed forest, and after looting it, I slept the night away. Then I ran in a direction for a long time, and I'm gonna be honest, there really wasn't much. At one point, a mermaid song caught me, and I was stuck between the mermaids and an angry polar bear, which was pretty dangerous. Luckily, I had my projectile spell, or I probably would have been dead. By day 21, I hadn't found a single animal besides polar bears, so I figured there was probably some sort of issue with the snow. So I went into the config and disabled the snow being higher than 1 layer, and sure enough, I immediately started finding more mob spawns. And with that fix, I continued exploring. And I was finally able to hunt animals for food, meaning I might not starve out here. Most of what I was traveling on was just frozen ocean, and I don't really know what I expected to find in an ocean biome, but I probably should have stuck to land, gonna be honest. On the bright side, I did find quite a few diamonds in the ice in the ocean. Upon finding land, I saw 2 dungeons immediately. One was a goblin castle with a boss bar for the Goblin King, and I definitely was not ready for that yet. The other was a big tower dungeon, just like one that I found in my 100 Days as an Archer video, which I know has witches and armored zombies in it. I went into the tower's first floor, and the bottom floor had just tons of blocks of wheat, which was really nice for food. I also got a bustling fungus item that would heal me more if I stood still, which wasn't bad. I tried to go to the next floor, but I immediately learned that I do not have the DPS to deal with armored zombies. I then found a dungeon with a house on top, and it had a mana boost chainmail chestplate, which I figured would be pretty useful. I then took that opportunity to cook some meat, and then I slept off the night. Then, on day 23, I found the perfect place to move to. It was an underground village that was completely free of all the snow and dangers of the surface. It had a blacksmith, farms, everything. I planned on building my own room here, but this place was from a different mod, so it didn't have a natural waystone, so I had to either find one or make one. I found a waystone on day 24, and then I learned that I could literally just mine it up and move it wherever I want to, which I never knew that in the past. I probably should have understood that, but that's really good to know. While I was heading back to the underground village, this weird green block sprouted out heads and started spitting poison at me. It was by far the strangest mob I've ever seen in Minecraft, and then, after taking out all the heads, it died and it dropped literally nothing, not even experience. Like, why? I then spent the rest of day 24 hollowing out the center of the village, and I should definitely have enough space now. There was even this abandoned farm room in the village right next to where I was moving into, which was really useful. Granted, when I broke the blocks and went in there, a villager came over and claimed it as their own, so I guess it wasn't really abandoned anymore, but still. I then spent the entirety of day 25 transferring and sorting my stuff from the first village to my very new, very cool underground village, which is way better. I then spent day 26 renovating my new room. I made it look a little bit nicer. It wasn't amazing or anything, but it could store my stuff and it would do. I then borrowed a neighbor's room against their will for my glyph press and volcanic source link because I read that the volcanic source link could put lava under it, and I didn't really want that, so I just used their room instead. Day 27, I had enough diamonds to make a diamond axe and a diamond warhammer. The warhammer said that it could pierce armor, which I figured might be useful for taking on that dungeon. And then I went to take on that dungeon, and it was quite the challenge. I managed to clear the second floor of all the zombies, and then I looted it and I got some recall potions as well as an infusion item that would give me an extra heart. I ran to the next floor trying to rush it down before any mobs spawned, but then for some reason there were witches making ender dragon noises, and then there was a zombie destroying all my health, and I got poisoned, so I just dug outside the wall and just sort of sat there, regenerating all my HP. I started using golden apples that I had, and I ran in, broke the spawner, and then I looted the chest. I got 2 items called Tougher Times, which gave me a chance to block incoming damage. I tried getting to the next floor, but there were just way too many zombies and witches, and I would definitely need better gear before coming back here. The next day I used a mob drop that I got earlier to make the Summon Wolves glyph. I then made a spell that would let me summon 2 wolves to help me fight. I was pretty weak in fights right now, so I figured this might help out. I then made an enchantment table and set it up with bookshelves, and then I enchanted my Warhammer with level 30, getting sharpness 4 and knockback 2. Then on day 29, I went back to the dungeon again. I knew from my Archer video that the next 2 floors had basically nothing in terms of loot, so I just ran all the way to the top floor for the major loot room. This floor had a bunch of enchanted books and also ancient tomes, and ancient tomes allowed me to get an enchantment level higher than normally possible. I got tomes for sharpness, efficiency, feather falling, stuff like that. I also got a lens maker's glasses item that would give me a chance to deal double damage when in my inventory. Then the final chest had these augment arrows, which could be used to like augment a spell from an enchanter's bow later on. I didn't end up making that, but the arrows look kind of cool. I also got more ancient tomes for looting, feather falling, and unbreaking. Overall, this tower was definitely worth the struggle. I then recall potioned home and stored all of the loot. I couldn't really use most of it yet, but it was good to have regardless. Day 30, I got to making some more glyphs and spells. I made glyphs for Leap, Conjure Mage Block, Conjure Mage Light, and Delay. I made a few spells with these. One of them places really cool mage lights, which immediately replaced all of my torches. Another one lets me leap really far in the direction that I looked, but I would probably want some type of fall damage immunity before using it, because I'm not trying to die to my own spell. Then I made a spell that uses the Mage-like glyph on myself, which gives me night vision. Amazing spell to have. And the last one that I made would let me place a mage block for my long distance, which I figured might be useful for bridging. I ended up not even using the delay glyph because I had no spells that would really benefit from it, so it wasn't the best. Now that I had a few utility spells, I wanted to try and get better armor. Diamonds were a bit hard to come by, but I had another idea. I teleported to the first tower that I found, which happened to be in a desert biome. I wanted to find deathworms to make armor out of their drops. However, I quickly discovered that the snowstorm had left the deathworms pretty much extinct. There were a few, but not many. I ended up killing 2, and I only got rotten flesh, and needless to say, that is definitely not the drop that I needed. Then, that night, I found another deathworm that was stuck under the snow, so I'm like, okay, I'm gonna dig it out. And then when I go to dig it out, it makes a massive crater and jump scares me, which is not cool, but joke's on them, they couldn't dig back under the snow, so I could just shoot them from a distance and kill them pretty easily. And when it died, it gave me 12 chitin, which is really good because you only need 24 for a full set of armor, so that was already halfway there. Day 32, I just sort of kept hunting more deathworms for chitin, and I ended up getting a giant deathworm egg from one of them that I forgot to use because I'm not smart. Then that night, I ended up killing a snowman that dropped a snow globe. I did not know what a snow globe did, so I'm like, okay, I'll just click it. Maybe it does something really fun or cool. And it started a cold snap horde event. This was basically, a typical zombie horde, but snowmen. There were snowmen everywhere, constantly attacking me, and I was not geared enough for that, and I really didn't want to die. So I recall potioned home, only to find that the horde is not tied to an area, it's tied to me, meaning it didn't end when I went home. Well, this was a problem. I then slept out the night hoping for it to go away, and nope, it didn't go away then either. Yup. On day 33, I made all the armor that I could right now, and then I sorted all my stuff. I then enchanted my chestplate with level 30 and got an enchantment called Warding, which would give me absorption when I took damage, which was pretty good. Then I went up to the surface to face the snowman army. There were tons of snowmen everywhere, and I summoned my wolves to help out, but the horde's meter was going down very slowly. I was fighting them off for the entire day. When it became nightfall, I was going to get my recall potion out of my inventory, and this one behind me makes a terrifying noise and explodes and does a ton of damage. And by day 34, the horde was not even halfway over. I fought them for a bit, and then my leggings broke. And this was actually a blessing in disguise, because I made diamond leggings with the diamonds that I had, and enchanted them with level 30, and got an enchantment called Slimy. Slimy does different things depending on the armor piece that it's on, and on leggings it negates fall damage, which was the most amazing thing I could ask for. Using my leap spell, I could now basically fly wherever I want to without dying to fall damage, which was incredible. I used the leap spell to fly all the way over and kill a squid for an ink sac, and then I went back home to make something. Using the 2 ink sacs, I made 6 golem spells, but now I needed pumpkins to make golems with these. And y'all ever have that thing in a video game where the second you want or need something, it becomes the rarest thing to exist, but then like you always see it whenever you don't need it? Yeah, that was this. I spent days 35 and 36 flying around looking for pumpkins and found none of them. This was really frustrating because the horde was there the whole time and I probably could have just killed them all at that point, but I was really committed to the golem idea, and honestly it wasted 2 days, so that was cool. Then on day 37 I gave up on finding pumpkins and just planted some seeds that I had in my farm, and then I logged out for the day in real life and I logged back in and the horde was gone. I really did not feel good about that. I didn't really win, and I feel like I kinda cheated, but the horde was gone for now, but I definitely would rematch them later on. But now my next goal was to go to the nether. I wanted to get experience from nether quartz, and I also needed materials to upgrade my spellbook. But before I went there, I wanted a backpack because I had a lot of inventory issues. I needed wool for those, so I chose to kill a woolly mammoth, which, despite the name, they do not seem to actually drop wool. And then the next day I went to explore and try and find some wool. And I gotta say, exploring with the leap spell was kind of fun. This is probably the most enjoyable form of flying I've ever had in Minecraft. It's just really satisfying. I ended up going into a dungeon in a Badlands biome hoping there was wool, and immediately I got phantom membranes. This was a really random thing to have in a dungeon, but I needed them for a spell later on, so I'll take it. I also got a topaz brooch, which gives me a barrier when I get a kill, which sounds like it might be decent for like dungeons or whatever. I didn't find wool down there, but I did get a decent amount of string, which is close enough. Then I got golden boots with a nether run enchantment, which could make me faster in the nether, which was really convenient because they also make piglins not attack me, so like they're really good for the nether. This dungeon was really perfect for no reason at all. However, then it got a little bit scary. I fell into a hole with a skeleton and a snowman right when my night vision wore off, and then I couldn't get out of the hole because I was panicking so much, and then I fell even deeper down the hole, and then there was a boss zombie that spawned, so I just recall potioned home. I was not dealing with that. I was not dying right now. I was out of there. And with the string that I got from that dungeon, I was able to make a small backpack, so that dungeon was very worth exploring. I then enchanted a diamond pickaxe with level 30, and I got efficiency 4, fortune 2, and renew, which said it would restore durability over time. I'm pretty sure it didn't work, but it sounded really cool at the time. Overall though, a really good pickaxe. Day 39, I set out again to find more wool. I ended up finding another underground village that just had free iron golem materials on the wall. 8 blocks of iron and 2 pumpkins for free, which would have been really good during the cold snap horde, but you know, it's cool now. Then that night, I found a massive Cyclops cave. Cyclops own a lot of pet sheep, and they also drop wool themselves, which means this was exactly what I needed to find. I began firing at it with my projectile spell, and luckily it was a little too big to fit through its own doorway, so I could shoot it from a safe distance. It took almost the entire night, but eventually, the Cyclops went down. I looted the cave as the sun rose on day 40, and I got a bunch of wool, mutton, and gold nuggets. I then used my leap spell to find a tower with a waystone, and when I looted that chest, I got a mana regen 3 enchanted book, which is really nice. I didn't want to use it yet, but I wanted to use it when I got better armor. I headed home and upgraded my backpack all the way to large, and now I had plenty of inventory. I then spent the rest of day 40 cooking the meat that I got from the Cyclops den, which might be a bit of a waste of a day, but I had a lot of food now, so it was worth it. Then on day 41, I went to the nether. I needed quartz, I needed blaze rods, and then I was done here for now. The nether was pretty spooky in this mod pack. There were weird flying demons, and there was a giant stone golem with a laser eye. There was a lot of weird stuff. I found a bastion, but piglin brutes were not something that I wanted to fight right now, so I left. And while the nether was kinda ominous and scary, it wasn't actually that dangerous. I even found these like really cool looking dinosaur things. Like, look at these, they're sick. All of the new mobs that I saw that were pretty cool, to be honest. Like, look at this little like flying firebird and stuff. It's pretty cool. Then after a bit of searching, I found a fortress in the most terrifying way. I got shot by a skeleton, then I nearly fell into lava, and then I barely leap spelled my way out of that, and then I landed directly on the fortress on fire. I almost died right there. That's crazy. I farmed blaze rods for a bit, and then after a while, there was a wither skeleton boss, and I didn't want to fight that, so I ran away, and I portaled home. I ended up in an ice maze biome, which I really wasn't ready for right now, so I just recall potioned home. I now had the blaze rods that I needed, but to upgrade my book, I also needed more diamonds. And I also wanted more diamond armor and stuff like that, so I wanted to go mining. I mined for like the entire day, and I ended up getting a lot of this platinum stuff, and I had previously overlooked it, but the armor seemed kind of insane. By day 43, I had 17 diamonds, 25 platinum, and then a bunch of other stuff. I was out of recall potions, so I wanted to brew some more, but I didn't have enough blaze powder to power the brewing stand, so I guess I would just have to use waystones to get home for now. I set up 5 different blast furnaces, and I put in the platinum that I got, and it said that it would take 400 seconds per platinum in a blast furnace. So this was going to take a lot of coal and a lot of time. Then, while I was waiting for the platinum to smelt, I upgraded my spellbook to the Mage's Spellbook. I could now use a tier 2 spell glyph, so I spent a bit looking through them to decide what to make. I then spent the rest of day 44 prepping the materials for my new glyphs, and then on day 45 I made them. I made glyphs of Cold Snap, Wind Shear, Flare, and AoE, but I would need to get more wood from the Magic Forest to make more. The Flare glyph apparently only worked on enemies that were on fire, so I combined it with an Ignite glyph, and this spell was nuts. It didn't use that much mana, and then it lit things on fire and destroyed them. The Cold Snap glyph apparently worked the same way as the Flare one, except for on enemies that were slowed, so I combined it with a Freeze AoE spell, and this just nuked things. The Wind Shear glyph said that it only worked on enemies that were in the air, which is way too niche for my liking, so I didn't even bother using it. But regardless of that, my magic damage had drastically increased. I went back home and checked my platinum, and apparently I only had enough coal for about half of the platinum, so I would need a lot more coal. The next day I wanted to get more wood to make more glyphs, and I also wanted more coal for my platinum. I got a bunch of coal, and then while I was looking for a magic forest biome, I looted a pillager tower, and I got another one of those topaz brooches that gives me like absorption when I get a kill, so now I can get even more hearts per kill. Then I found a Goblin Camp. I wasn't ready for the Goblin King's castle yet, but I figured this little camp might be fun. I used my new fire damage spell, and these things got blown to bits. And then one of the goblins reminded me real quick that I am not in fact wearing a chestplate. Yeah, it did over half my health in one hit, and if I didn't pause my game immediately to give myself like a second to think, it would have been over, but luckily my fire spell destroyed it. The next day I found a ruined portal, and I got more of those glasses to give me a chance to deal double damage. Then I finally found a magic forest, and I gathered a ton of wood for the glyphs. I then found a waystone and teleported home. I put coal in the blast furnaces, and then I started making the rest of my glyphs. I made the glyphs of Extend Time, Heal, Shield, Explosion, Crush, Firework, and Gravity. I immediately applied as many Extend Time glyphs as I could to my night vision spell because it wore off way too fast. And then I tested the other glyphs. Shield would give me a buff to reduce the damage that I took, which was not bad, but I really never used it. And then Crush would let me turn stone into gravel, which was a lot less cool than it sounded when it was called Crush. You know, I thought it was gonna like crush mobs. No, it crushes rocks. Firework would just make random fireworks. Not really useful, but it was kind of fun. Then on day 48, I tested the gravity and the explosion effects. Gravity would cause any block to fall like it's gravel or sand, which was really cool, but even with max AoE, I couldn't make it too crazy, so not the best. But then explosion, you could probably guess what it does, but with max AoE, this spell was nuts. Just to use it once used my entire mana bar, so I would only be able to use it once at any given time, but it was very satisfying. After having probably too much fun with the explosion spell, I went back home and checked my platinum to see that it was all smelted. I made my full set of platinum armor, and this stuff looked pretty crazy, but the diamond leggings still had slimy for the fall damage immunity, so I wanted to keep those for now. But then I started enchanting, and I got very lucky. My helmet got Unbreaking 3 and then a better version of Mending, meaning it's like basically unbreakable. And then my pants got Reinforced, which to my understanding makes them unbreakable, and also Slimy, meaning I still had fall damage immunity. This was perfect. Then on my chest plate, I got Unbreaking 3, Slimy, and Elder's Protection. Slimy on a chest plate so that it would let me slide down walls, which actually just gave me slope ball next to a wall. And then Elder's Protection made me immune to Mining Fatigue, so overall, pretty good chest plate. And then on my boots, I got Protection 3, Nether Run, and Unbreaking 3. I then put the Mana Regen 3 book from earlier on my leggings because I knew that these were going to stay around for a long time. And I could also fly a lot easier now with the leap spell because my mana regen insanely fast. On day 49, I wanted to take my gear even further by using an item called the Enchanting Apparatus. I made 8 arcane pedestals, the Enchanting Apparatus, and an arcane core, and then I put them near my other magic stuff. Then I looked in the book, and every single enchantment that I wanted required way more source gems than I had right now, so instead I made Mage Bloom Seeds to test the machine, and this thing looked kinda cool. Also, the Mage Bloom Seeds would let me make mage armor later on, so they were pretty important. I then made a bunch of these things called crystallizers, which to my understanding would make a bunch of free source gems over time. However, I learned later that that is not actually what they do, so looking back on it, I look kinda dumb, but that's fine. Then on day 50, I wanted to redeem myself for the Cold Snap Horde from before. And I had pumpkins now. I made 6 carved pumpkins, and then I combined them with the golem spells from earlier to make golem heads. Then I went to the surface to make my golems to help fend off the horde. However, the very first one that I made was a bone golem, which I immediately learned burns in the sunlight like a skeleton, so that's -1 golem for me. Yeah. With that one failure out of the way, I then made a packed ice golem, a gold block golem, and then 3 obsidian golems. I then used the snow globe and summoned the horde. The snowmen started spawning immediately, and I began firing my fire spell, destroying them. My golems were putting in a ton of work too, fighting off tons of snowmen, allowing me to reduce their numbers way faster than before. And then I sorta accidentally hit one of my obsidian golems, and it kinda was trying to kill me, but luckily it was a bit more interested in the snowmen, so it gave up. There was this one golden snowman that seemed immune to my fire spell, and then after hitting me, it would strike lightning. Like, that's crazy. However, while immune to fire, it was definitely not immune to my Warhammer, so not too big of a deal. Eventually, it was down to just a few snowmen, and I blew them away with my fire spell, defeating the Cold Snap Horde. I cleared the final remaining snowmen, and then I looked at the damage. It seemed that only one of my obsidian golems survived, and the rest had all died in the battle. However, one of the ones that died did drop the golem spell, so I used that to create a hay bale golem in my farm, because supposedly it boosted crop growth. And then that night is when I learned that my crystallizers do not do what I thought they did. They actually require a source to be given to them from a jar or something, so yeah, not exactly free source gems. I then opened all of the presents that I got from the snowmen of the horde, and the very first one had a pig, which was kind of cool. Look at him. I opened the rest of them in another room just in case they could explode or something, and I got like a horse and a bunch of ice and stuff like that, but nothing amazing. The next day I wanted to upgrade my gear even further with the enchantment apparatus, so I needed a lot of source gems. So I went off in search of a magical forest that I hadn't found before because I wanted to make sure it had plenty of gems underground. And on that trip, an Elder Guardian under the ice tried to give me mining fatigue, so I learned that my Elder Protection enchantment was actually pretty nice. And then I wandered a bit too close to an ice dragon's territory. It hit me with the icy breath, which I did not realize would make the leap spell useless. I was a little bit worried that I was going to die here and just not be able to escape, but luckily I managed to get behind some trees so the breath couldn't hit me, and then I barely managed to use the leap spell to get away. If I got hit by that breath one more time, I was probably going to die. Then the next day I found a magic forest biome, and I spent the entire day mining source gems until I had nearly 3 stacks. My pickaxe was almost broken, so I stopped there, but I totally could have found more. Then on day 53 I began using the enchanting apparatus. I put mana regen 1 on my helmet, but then I immediately learned that I would need more of these source berries to get more, so I went back to that forest to get some. And while I was searching for berries, I found a wandering trader. I checked his trades, and then when I closed the inventory, he transforms into a thief and tries to attack me. I managed to leap away before he could steal any of my stuff, and then I took him out with 2 fire spells. That was actually kinda terrifying. I was not ready. I then learned that I could bone meal the wild sourceberry bushes, so I got up to like a stack and a half, and then I went back home. On day 54, I made a bunch of extend time glyphs, and then I used them to enchant my helmet and chestplate up to mana regen 3. I also put level 1 mana boost on my pants, but this stuff was insanely expensive, so that was all I could do right now. The next day, I was going to get more source gems for more enchantments, and I had the most terrifying ice dragon encounter ever. It was freezing me, and I couldn't leap away no matter what I did, and it was destroying most of the trees that I tried to hide behind. Eventually, I managed to use leap while I wasn't being frozen, and then I get away, only to leap right into another ice dragon's nest. I didn't even know they could be that close together. That was crazy. Luckily, it didn't see me fast enough, so I was able to get away from it, but that was terrifying. I also got an item from a ruined portal that would let me resist damage while sprinting, which seemed pretty good. I then found a magical forest biome, and I spent a while mining the gems. I found a massive cave too, which normally would have been a little bit dangerous, but with the mana regen enchantments that I had, I could now spam the fire spell pretty easily and body all of the mobs. While I was underground, I found this pretty cool looking turtle, but then when I hit it, it starts using Earthquake and going crazy, but luckily it was pretty easy to avoid and take out. I was also attacked by a bear in a ravine, which was a little bit, confusing. After getting over 5 stacks of source gems, I went back home. The next day I was going to enchant again, but quite frankly, I just didn't have enough lapis to do so, so instead I made a ring of lesser discount, which I think reduces the mana cost. I also made an amulet of mana regen, so now my spells cost less mana to use, and also the mana would regenerate faster. On day 58, I went back to the nether. I needed more blaze rods for potions, eyes of ender, a lot of stuff, and I also wanted to fight the wither, so I would need to find another fortress. I ended up seeing this weird green fog that just sort of looked like it would kill me. I didn't really want to test that theory though, so I went the other way. I ended up finding a fortress, and then I used my cold blast spell here because I figured the fire probably wouldn't do too great. I found a blaze spawner almost immediately, which was perfect. And in between blaze spawns, I was kind of just scouting out the fortress and seeing what was around it, and I ended up seeing a bear in the nether. I don't really know how it got there, I don't know why it was there, but you know what? I don't judge, it can do whatever it wants to do, but it was a little strange to see. A boss blaze ended up spawning, and I took it out, and it gave me an iron shovel. It was a pretty good iron shovel, but that thing took a hot minute to kill. I kind of wanted more than an iron shovel, but oh well. After a bit, I killed a blaze, and I got a little thing saying I had killed 50 blazes, and that 50th blaze dropped a kite, which was kind of cool, like a little trophy to get. I've never seen that before. I didn't know I had a mod that did that, but it's pretty cool. Then in a chest, I found an obsidian skull, which was basically fire resistant, so that's really good to have here. I also found a tome for a custom spell from the mod, so I tested it on the next wither skeleton, and it just lifts it in the air and then pulls it towards me. It's kind of cool. Out of another chest, I got a crowbar item that would let me deal more damage to enemies above 90% HP, meaning the first hit on enemies would now do a lot of damage. I had enough fragments for 2 wither skulls, meaning I would just need 1 more skull. And then this little baby wither skeleton holding a skull, which I know has a 100% skull drop chance, jumps off the fortress into lava. Like, why? That was so rude! A bit later, I saw another baby wither skeleton, and it was definitely threatening to jump, but I sniped it with my ice spell before it could, and I took it out. I now had 3 wither skulls and plenty of blaze rods, meaning I was done with the nether. The morning of day 60, I put my kite on display on the surface, and it looks kinda cool, not gonna lie. I then used some of the blaze rods to upgrade my ring of lesser discount into the ring of greater discount, and then I made recall potions, so now I wouldn't have to hunt for waste stones whenever I wanted to go home. It's lit! I also enchanted some books, and I put Unbreaking on my pickaxe and Reinforced on my chestplate. On day 61, it was finally time to take down the Goblin King. However, the front gates were guarded by Colin the Menacing, a boss goblin. And he was very fast. Like, I almost couldn't get away with how fast he was. Look at the speed of this guy. It's crazy. It took forever, but I took him out and he gave me a diamond axe with efficiency 2, so in my opinion, it was worth it. This place was absolutely loaded with boss enemies, and there's no way I would be able to kill all of them. I left around looting the place and got some emeralds, gold, enchanted books, stuff like that. I was actually able to use the spell tome from the nether fortress to pull one of the boss goblins off the tower, so that was kinda cool. I then killed what I thought was the Goblin King, but it ended up just being an ogre with a lot of HP instead. Because I was using the fire spell, I accidentally lit the castle on fire, but I'm gonna call it strategic because it gathered all the boss mobs in one place, so it kinda worked out. While they were grouped up, I quickly leapt in and looted the chest by the king's throne. It had a ring in it that would heal me when I killed mobs while it was in my offhand. Unfortunately, my Warhammer does attack slower if I have an item in my offhand, but I figured this ring could be good for spells. While I was firing spells into this cluster of goblins, I got an achievement for slaying one of every goblin type, which is literally a lie because I had never killed the king and I had no idea where he was. But then I eventually found the Goblin King in a small fence with one of the boss goblins. He was just sort of chilling there, and honestly, he was a lot less intimidating than I thought. I started firing spells at him, and after taking a bit of damage, he started teleporting around and firing little projectiles that did, like, no damage. He wasn't a threat whatsoever, he was just very hard to hit. But after a while, I hit him with one final ice spell, taking out the Goblin King. He dropped a Goblin Crown, which said it could give weakness to nearby mobs and also reduce Goblin detection range, but overall, not really that great. Then, on day 62, I used my explosion spell to completely decimate the castle. I blew most of the place away, and the boss goblins that were still there could suck it. They don't deserve a castle, they don't deserve anything. Heck them, bro. When I got home, I made an arcane pedestal to put the crown on display. I then enchanted a ton of books with level 1, hoping to maybe see like a smithing or mending enchantment for my other gear, which I did not see, so I basically just wasted all of my experience. The next day, I wanted more lapis for enchantments, and I also wanted levels and all that fun stuff, so I decided that it was time to hunt some dungeons. However, after spending like the entire day looking, I went into one dungeon and learned pretty quickly that it was not worth going into. There was basically nothing here. At that point, I just decided to go mining for lapis because I was not going to find it in dungeons. I mined for days 64 and 65 and got a bunch of diamonds, platinum, and lapis, and then I headed home and began smelting the platinum to repair my armor. I also used all the platinum that I currently had to repair my armor as well, because I didn't entirely trust the reinforced enchantment to stop my armor from breaking. And then, on day 66, I spent the entirety of the day making glyphs that I needed for enchanting. Like, I wish I was exaggerating, but it literally took the entire day to make these glyphs. It takes a while. The next day I upgraded my boots to protection 4, but I didn't have enough lapis for the rest of my armor, and I also didn't have enough magic wood to make more source, so I had to go out and gather resources again. So I spent the entire day gathering more stuff. And then I spent all of the next day enchanting my armor with protection 4. It took the entire day because I had to keep waiting for source to generate, and this process uses a lot of it, and honestly, in hindsight, I probably should have made like a better way to generate source, like maybe multiple volcanic source links. I don't really know, but it's too late for that now. But anyways, protection 4 armor, very cool. Day 69, I wanted to fight the Wither, so I went to the Nether to grab some soul sand, and I had everything that I needed. I used my leap spell to fly far away from the village, and then I summoned the Wither, and I started firing spells at it, only to learn that it is immune to magic. Not exactly the best scenario to learn that in, and then I tried to melee it, only to learn that I couldn't reach it, so I had to find a creative solution to that. And that creative solution ended up being launching myself into the air with my leap spell, and then as I was falling, hitting the Wither with my Warhammer, dealing a little bit of damage. It probably wasn't the best solution, but it let me deal damage, which is all that really mattered. I kept alternating between my leap spell and my heal spell just to make sure I didn't, die to the Wither effect. I ended up taking the Wither very high into the sky, but once it got below half HP, I was able to lure it to the ground and melee it the rest of the way. It was an absolute pain of a fight, but I got the Nether Star. The Nether Star was one of the major pieces that I needed to upgrade my spellbook to tier 3, the other major pieces being the Wild Then Tribute and a Totem of Undying. The Wild Then Tribute came from a boss, so I kinda wanted to get the Totem of Undying first, just so I wouldn't, die. I looked in my book and saw that I could make a ritual that would start a raid, but it needed ink sacks, and I also wanted ink sacks to get more golem spells, so I went to farm those. And after getting some ink sacks, I made the Tablet of Challenge and I grabbed my ritual brazier. I then made a ton of golem heads so I could have some golems to help during the raid. And then on day 71, I went back to my first village because it was honestly the only above ground village that I had seen, and I had no other options. I then made a lapis golem, some quartz golems, a polished granite golem, and then I tried to make a nether brick golem, but that didn't work for some reason. And finally, I made a Prismarine Golem and some more Obsidian Golems. Then I threw down the brazier and activated the Ritual of Challenge. It started a raid, but then it just said one raider remaining, and that raider was nowhere to be seen. I looked all through the night and found literally nothing. I assumed the raid ritual was glitched or something, meaning I had to either get Bad Omen or I had to find a woodland mansion. And woodland mansions are one of, if not the rarest thing in Minecraft, so I just went to look for a pillager tower, hoping to get Bad Omen. Day 72 to 73, I just sort of kept flying, just kept going. And then I started generating a lot of chunks and I started lagging, which sucked. There was one point when I found these monkeys in a jungle, which was pretty cool, but they're not pillagers, so not what I need. I also looted a tower dungeon like the one earlier, and most of the loot was pretty irrelevant to me, but I did get a magic mirror, which was basically an infinite recall potion, so that was definitely worth checking. On day 74, I ended up in one of those ice maze biomes, and there were these super ugly, like, teeth fish things. Look at these guys, bro. Also, this biome was incredibly laggy, but I wanted to explore it because I hadn't seen anything in it yet. But then, just outside that biome, I spotted a frost maw. It was basically a magic yeti boss, and I definitely wanted to take it down. I swapped to my fire spell and started going in on this thing. It hit me with a massive ice ball attack, freezing me solid, but luckily it didn't attack me during that, or it could have done a lot of damage. And after thawing, I just sort of spammed the fire spell over and over, and eventually it went down pretty easily. It dropped an ice crystal, which would let me use a freezing ice attack, but I definitely already had better magic than that. And then after that, in the ice maze biome, I saw a large wooden structure. I flew into the top room, and there was an illager just sort of holding an emerald, not really doing anything, so I killed him, and then I looted his room and got a ton of iron and stuff like that. I killed a ton of pillagers in this tower, some of which dropped stacked axes, which was kinda weird, but none of them gave totems and none of them had banners, so it was back to exploring. And right after that, I spotted a massive pillager boat, so I figured that had a decent chance of getting me either a totem or Bad Omen. I flew to the very top, and then I descended and started blowing away all the pillagers with my ice spell. And when I went into the ship's interior, I immediately got attacked by a pillager with a banner, which was perfect. So I got Bad Omen, and I also got a horn from one of them that would let me summon Captain Cornelia, but I would save that for later. I then went down to loot the ship, and upon releasing a villager from a prison down there, the game considered this to be a village and started a raid. I took out the first illager that I saw, and it seemed like the raid was actually working this time, meaning I would be able to get my Totem of Undying. I quickly looted the rest of that floor, and then I went up to take on the raid. Although I'm not too sure if the pillager AI was working too well, because they weren't really fighting back very much. I also killed my 50th zombie during that and got a kite, so that was kind of cool. During one of the waves, I spotted an evoker, and I was not letting him escape. I blitzed him down with my ice spell, and I got a Totem of Undying. The next morning, I finished up the raid, and I ended up with 3 Totems of Undying. Also, can I just say that Vexes are the worst enemy in this game? Because they are the worst enemy in this game. I hate these things, bro. I used my magic mirror to go back home, and then I repaired my armor. And then I put the ice crystal and some of the ominous banners on display, and then I go up to put my zombie kite on display, and I learned that my blaze kite was just gone. Like, why? That was so sick! I now had everything I needed for the tier 3 spellbook except the Wild End Tribute. I crafted the tablet for the ritual, and then I got all 3 drops that I would need to augment it. I didn't know how strong the boss was, so I built 4 obsidian golems to help during the fight. I also had my 3 totems of undying, so ideally I should be fine here. I put my tablet in the brazier along with 1 of each wild end drop to augment it to spawn the boss. Then I activated the ritual, and then after a bit, it spawned. This thing was like some sort of crazy werewolf, and it came right after me. I hit it with my fire spell a bunch, and then after a bit, one of the golems stun-locked it and took the health bar all the way down, and then comes phase 2. It transformed and grew wings. Immediately, it dive bombs me and takes me down to 2 hearts. I quickly swapped my leap spell and then flew away to heal, and if I didn't do that, it would have been over. This thing was doing damage. And it was insanely fast, and I had to keep using my leap spell to avoid the dive bomb attack. Eventually, it summoned allies to help it, and this fight was becoming very difficult.
After a bit of running away and attacking it every now and then, I managed to take down the second phase with my ice spell. And then in the third phase, it grew spikes and it was even faster. It was firing a ton of spikes in every direction like some kind of volcano or something, and this thing was so beyond aggressive and terrifying, it's not even funny. A message appeared in the chat saying the Chimera began raging, and it gave me a gravity effect making my leap spell nearly impossible to use. I then ended up losing the Chimera for a second, and I had no idea where it was, but then it greeted me with a massive dive bomb. Luckily, the gravity effect had worn off just before that, so I could leap away to heal, or it would have been over. I kept avoiding the dive bombs and running away from the spike barrages, and eventually I managed to get a ton of fire spells off in a row, taking out the Wild End Chimera. That was easily one of the coolest and most difficult bosses I fought in Minecraft, and it got me my Wild End tribute. Also, apparently my golems had all just screwed off during that fight and just didn't help whatsoever after the second phase. Then I headed back home and upgraded my spellbook to the Archmage's spellbook. I could now use tier 3 spell glyphs. The next day I made glyphs of Blink, Split, Summon Vex, Orbit, Intangible, and Fangs. Orbit would cause the spell to spin around me in 3 orbs, and whenever the orbs touched an entity, the spell would be cast on it. Split was probably the best glyph that I made here. It would let my spells split into multiple, so now I can fire a massive barrage of fire spells and stuff like that. Fangs would let me summon Evoker Fangs from the ground, and by combining it with the Split glyph, I could make massive waves of them. And by casting Fangs on myself, it would summon Fangs around me in a small AoE, and I used this to make a spell that basically just instantly killed everything around me. Summon Vex was pretty obvious. I could summon Vex. I tried splitting it to get more than 3 Vexes at a time, but unfortunately that does not work. Blink was a teleport glyph, and by amplifying it to the max, I could teleport insane distances. Intangible made blocks temporarily, intangible so I could walk through them, but I doubt I would ever really need that. I had a bit of fun with a split explosion spell, and then I made a fire shotgun spell because I figured that would be really strong. I now had insane magic spells. Now I needed blaze powder, so I went to the nether and grinded some for the rest of day 78. Now that I had power, I needed the armor to match, and to get Archmage robes, I needed chorus fruits, meaning I had to beat the Ender Dragon. So I made Eyes of Ender and followed them, and when I reached the stronghold, it was definitely not your typical stronghold. There were these cool banners, there were cool chests with all kinds of stuff in them. It was kinda lit. I ran around collecting banners and looting the chests, and eventually I found a staircase that led down to this massive, really cool looking room. Under that room, there was a pyramid with a chest on it, and then there was a massive lava pool, and there were these weird wither skeletons in platinum armor. I'm pretty sure this was not part of the stronghold. I killed a few wither skeletons and got a splitter, which seemed like some sort of weird hammer, but not as good as my current weapon, so don't really need that. And that weird side thing out of the way, it was back to the stronghold. I wandered into an amazing library. It had a few enchanted books, but none of them were really useful to me, but it looked insane. And this entire stronghold, while very, very cool, was a total pain to navigate. There were staircases that just led to dead ends, there was a billion tunnels, and there was a chest that exploded. I literally could not find the portal room to save my life. I then heard this weird humming through the wall, and I mined to find it, and I found these dragon-looking people. These were kobolds, and apparently I was their friend now, so it's lit. By finding them, I actually found an entire section of the stronghold that I hadn't explored yet. And that section led me directly to the portal room. It took me like 2.5 days to find this, but hey, kobolds, MVP. When I got to the end, there were tons of the evil snowmen, and for some reason there was a bunch of wandering traders. I assumed that those were the thieves from before, and I took no risks and I took them out instantly. These snowmen, unlike the ones in the overworld, throw and drop chorus fruit. I began taking out all the towers with my explosion spell, and I also got a bottle of dragon's breath just in case I needed it. After destroying all the towers, I learned that the dragon is immune to magic just like the wither was, so I just started going in with the warhammer. And I didn't really have a bow or any sort of like ranged weapon to hit the dragon with, so in between perches I just sort of sat there and blinked around waiting for it to land. Eventually, it perched one last time, and I finished off the Ender Dragon. I gathered all the experience, collected the egg, and then I went to gather chorus fruit and also find an end city just to see if there was anything good. And oh yeah, I would say the loot's pretty good. The chests had a ton of the items that would give me buffs just by being in my inventory. I got more attack speed, more damage, more health, everything. I also got a cool spell that would launch things into the air and then blow them up like a firework, which was really fun. Overall, the end cities were very worthwhile. And after a bit of looting, I found a gateway and then I jumped into the end portal. Day 83, I began making the fibers that I needed for my armor, and then I realized that I would still need more blaze powder, so I went back to the nether and got more of that. And then after getting home, I made all of my fibers and then crafted the Archmage robes. These looked really cool, and while I had less health than my old armor, these would actually buff my mana by a lot, so I was way better in combat. I enchanted all my armor, and I got protection 3 or 4 on most of it, and then I re-rolled until I got slimy on my pants because I needed that. I then enchanted more helmets until I got a decent one, and then I used the rest of my experience on books, and then I combined what I could with my armor to make the best armor set that I could. Overall, the enchantments were very nice. The next morning, I retired my platinum armor by putting it on display. I then tested the new armor by using a max size explosion spell, and before I couldn't even use one of those because I didn't have the mana for it. But now it doesn't even use half of my mana bar. This armor was nuts. Now I had a few more things that I wanted to do. I had a certain tameable creature in this mod pack that I had not seen yet, so I wanted to go looking for it. During my adventure, I once again got caught in another Ice Dragon's Breath. I didn't think I'd be able to escape this time, so I fought back, and it took a lot of fire spells and a lot of knocking it back with my Warhammer, but eventually, I managed to take it out. A little bit scary, but I did manage to defeat an Ice Dragon. I also found a mausoleum, which I know you can't normally access, and I tried using my intangible spell and gravity spells to break in, but no luck. Now, I regret to say that I was looking for this tameable mob from days at 86 to 94. Over those few days, I fought a few ice dragons, and upon doing so, I learned that my entire armor set repaired itself. I assume it used like mana or something to repair. I don't really know. All I know is that it was very nice. I eventually realized that the mob that I was looking for might not be spawning because of like the modded grass blocks under the snow or something. I don't really know. I just broke a ton of the blocks, hoping to spread some vanilla grass through the area, maybe to like increase the chance of it spawning. I don't really know. On day like 5 of hunting this mob, I got kind of bored and just sort of started blowing up a nearby Breath of the Wild tower because I had nothing better to do. I saw a giant too, which was pretty cool. You don't see those every day. It died a little bit faster than I expected, but it was cool to see a giant. I also started exploring a bit of magic that I hadn't touched yet. Like I made a Ritual of Awakening, which turns the magic trees into these like golem dudes that fire magic spells. I kind of wish I knew those were a thing before, but oh well. I also made a spell that could place blocks under my feet, and I started like parkouring on the air all cool and stuff, but yeah, I was kind of losing my mind looking for this mob. But then on day 95, I finally found it. These were Chilloos, and they were adorable. They weren't even in the grassy area that I made. They were in the ice maze biome, and the wiki said that they spawn on grass, but there was no grass in the biome. Regardless, I used a blink spell combined with a warp scroll in my offhand to send these to my house, and then I used my mirror to go home. I had them in this little fenced-in area, and these things could dig up items out of the ground, and one of the items that they could dig up could be used to tame them. However, they could also dig things up like potatoes and carrots and stuff like that, so it was a bit of RNG. And I didn't really have much else to do right now, so I just sort of sat there and watched them waiting for truffles, and I watched them until day 98, and all I got were 2 carrots, 2 potatoes, and a beetroot. So yeah, that's like 2-3 days just for that. Pretty sick. Because that was all that I got, I just sort of gave up on taming one and just name tagged one instead. So yeah, this is Waffles the Chilloos. Say hello to Waffles in the comments, please and thank you. Yeah. Day 99, I had one last thing that I wanted to do. I had this shellhorn that I got from the Ice Maze biome, and I wanted to use it to summon this Captain Cornelia boss. It said that it should be used near water in the Ice Maze, so I broke a big area in the river, and then I used the horn, and nothing happened. I just sort of kept using it over and over, and after getting a bit closer to the water, the ghost of Captain Cornelia appeared. They were walking towards me, and my fire spell did nothing, so I summoned Vexes, which started putting in the work. I swapped to my Cold Blast spell, which actually hit them, and it did a ton of damage. Once they got low enough, they summoned a ton of these decked out drowned, and then they rose up into the sky, healing themselves back to full. I took out all the drowned, and then I went back to attacking Captain Cornelia. And honestly, they barely put up a fight after that. I was able to take them out pretty easily. I got a frozen key and also a helmet that looked absolutely horrible when worn. I searched around the biome to look for a place to use the frozen key, and eventually I saw a hole that leads underground, and it was guarded by pillagers. I took them out and slept off the night, and on day 100, I went into the pillager dungeon. I took out all the pillagers with my ice spell, and then I looted the barrels, and there was really nothing of value, but one of the rooms was just full of ice, which was a little convenient, because I had an item called the Frozen Key, so I broke the ice, and sure enough, it led to a treasure room. The room was full of ores and all kinds of other stuff, but nothing really worth taking on day 100. Then, in the center of the room on some ice, was a chest with a frozen lock. I used my Frozen Key, and then I opened the chest, and it had a bunch of treasure. It had a totem of undying, these underwater lights, and a rune of the storm. The rune of the storm said that it could be split on a splitting table, but the splitting table was not something I had the ability to make right now, so I would just consider the rune of the storm itself to be my final trophy. I then set up more pedestals and put up all the cool stuff that we had gotten during these 100 days. Then, as the final thing on day 100, I went over and bred a baby Chilu, and look how cute it is! Then, while I was admiring the baby Chilu, I saw a frozen truffle, and I picked it up and fed it to Waffles, and he was tamed! I was kind of freaking out. That was a little bit too perfect a timing. Probably looks scripted, it's not, but it's lit. I ran to my room and I made a piece of purple wool, and then I gave Waffles a sweater. Look at Waffles! Waffles is the greatest! I had stopped the blizzard and become a very cool, a very strong, a very cool winter mage, and defeated everything this world has to offer. And I tamed a Chilu named Waffles! And now, the 100 days of winter mage journey was complete. And that is 100 days as a winter mage in hardcore Minecraft. Thank you everybody for watching. Be sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video, stuff like that. Maybe comment any ideas you have for future 100 days videos. But for now, I'm going to call it there, and I will see you all in the next video later. Also, thank you once again to World of Warships for sponsoring today's video. Be sure to download the game at the link in the description.